So at this point, let's go ahead and start following the script as if we were PHP processing an edit workflow. So we're going to scroll down to the point where our script begins here, and we're checking to see what the action is. The first time the page loads, this action is empty, so we're going to skip all of this stuff here, and here, when we check to see if the output is empty, we're going to fill it with people display. Now let's go ahead and scroll up to people display. So in people display, we render the list of our users, and we add this edit link here. Now when someone clicks it, the script will be run again, except now we have the action of edit form in the URL, and the username equals whatever username we clicked. So at this point, we can scroll down to our if is set request action here. Now again, the reason we're using request here is because even though this is a get variable that we're checking right now, when the user submits the form, it will have a post variable for action. So request will either grab the action variable from get or post, whereas before we were just using get, which wouldn't have grabbed the post variable at all. So now we're going to switch based on what this action is, and we have an edit form. So what we're going to do is run the add form function, and we're going to grab the username from the URL here. Now if the username is empty, then we're running add form with an empty variable getting passed, which will trigger the add form. But we do have a username set here, and so this will trigger the edit form. So let's go ahead and check out add form, the function. Okay, so we have a username being passed here for add form. We set all these initial variables up, but since we have a username, we override a bunch of them and then populate our row variable with the row for the record that we want to edit. And if we scroll down here, we see we build up our form that's pre-filled with the information for the user, except for the username input. And for this hidden input here, the action is going to be edit. So this page will be loaded again, except the action that we're going to check against is going to be edit. So I'm going to scroll down here to this part where we switch based on the action, and we're going to have edit here. Now again, this is the same code that would run for add, at least at this point. So let's scroll down a bit more so we can see more of the code. We begin with our empty errors array. We start running through each of the inputs and validating them to make sure that the user has input entries for fields that are required, that they've input numbers for fields that require numbers, and so on. I'm going to keep scrolling down here. And then we're going to skip this validation because it says if request action equals add, which it's not. So we're going to skip the username validation because they're not adding a username. We're going to check to see if there's been any errors. Let's assume for now that there hasn't been. So let's skip into the processing part. So what we're doing first is running through each of the post variables, and we're passing it through MySQL real escape string in order to escape any characters that might muck up our SQL query. We trim it too in order to remove any spaces or extra lines off of the ends of the values, and then we add it to the inputs array. Next, we're checking to see if this is an add action, which it's not, so we're going to skip this, and then we're going to build an SQL statement that's proper for an update query. So here what we're doing is we're actually formatting our query to make it a little bit easier to read. This is just a demonstration that you can add extra spaces and new lines, just like you can in PHP, into an SQL query for any reason, particularly if it makes it easier to read. So again, our structure is update, and then the name of the table that we're going to update. And then we set the values that we're going to update. So this is a set of key value pairs. The key is going to be the name of the field. The value is going to be the value that we have cleaned up already from our form. So we're going to update the name, birth year, favorite band, shoe size, and password, making sure there's commas after each one except the last one. If you're copying and pasting lines here, it's easy to forget to remove that last comma. Now in PHP, when we're dealing with arrays and we use commas at the end of each array, the comma on the last array item is valid, so you don't have to worry about it there. But in an SQL query, it will break the query completely. So the final part of our update is where we tell MySQL which records to update. Now, if we didn't have this where query, it would update all of the records to reflect this. So we'd have multiple duplicate entries in our database with this information. But we just want to update the record where the username is identical to the username that we're working with now. So we'll add a where aspect to our query where the username equals and then the name of the username that got submitted with the form. And we're going to run the query through MySQL query, and then we're going to add the query to our notices at the top of the page so we can take a look at how it's structured. Next, if this result was true, what we're going to do is say this person was added. Now this is a place where we can improve the script because at this point, we're not adding a person, but we're editing a person. So we might want to modify this. That's a good challenge if you want to take it up here. And if this result is false, then we're going to run this where we add the error for the MySQL query as part of the notices that display at the top of the page. And finally, we're just breaking out of this switch statement. So throughout this, we didn't add anything to the output variable. So when we check to see if there's anything in there, it's empty. So we're going to add the people display to it. And so what you'll end up seeing is the list of the users with any notices about the user that you edited.